Thom Hartmann here on the labor and economic news. You need to know this. According to the Economic Policy Institute, as union membership has taken a tumble, the top 10% have gotten more wealthy. Union membership fell to 11% in 2014, where it remained in 2015. Share of income going to the top 10%, meanwhile, hit 47% in 2014, only slightly lower than 47.8% in 2012. The highest it has been since 1917. The earliest year data were available. When union membership was at its peak, it was 33.5% in 1945. The share of income going to the top 10% was only 32%. To boost wages for working people, policymakers need to intentionally tilt power back to working people by strengthening their rights to stand together and negotiate collectively for better wages and benefits, raising and improving labor standards, and achieving persistent low unemployment. Raising the D.C. minimum wage to $15 by 2020, would lift wages for 114,000 working people. A proposed ballot initiative would gradually raise Washington, D.C.'s minimum wage to $15 by mid-2020. It would also help tipped workers, such as waiters and bartenders, eventually get paid the full minimum wage instead of the $2.77 sub-minimum wage. This proposal would raise wages for 114,000 working people, about 14% of all D.C. workers, and over one-fifth of D.C. private sector workers. Once the minimum wage reaches $15, the average affected worker would earn roughly $2,900 more each year than he or she does now. This is not the stereotype of low-wage workers being teenagers working to earn spending money. The ones who would benefit are overwhelmingly adult workers who are supporting families of their own. Paolo Casal is reporting at economyincrisis.org that Chinese chicken is being labeled as product of America. Back in 2014, the U.S. Department of Agriculture approved U.S.-born and raised chicken to be sent to China for processing before being shipped back to the States for our consumption. Is there any upside? Apparently not. China's notorious for food safety standards. Essentially, they don't have any. Not to mention the fact that this is costing the U.S. jobs. These processing factories could be opened up here in the United States. They could offer thousands of jobs to the hundreds of thousands who are unemployed. They could provide jobs and money to those who are stuck and buried in a hole with debt. Then to add fuel to the fire, the USDA does not even plan to require its own regulators to supervise the Chinese processors on the premises. Contact your congressional representative and urge them to stand against this latest agreement between our USDA and China. The middle class is shrinking in Colorado and across the U.S. as incomes fall. Middle-income households in Metro Denver shrank from 58% of the population in 2000 to 53% in 2014, according to a report released Wednesday by the Pew Research Center. As shrinkage didn't come primarily from households moving into higher income brackets, but rather from more households moving into lower income brackets. Quote, "We still have a lot of people who are middle income, but I can understand the reason for concern," end quote, said Gary Horvath, a Broomfield economist. Quote, "The recovery in terms of income hasn't been strong," he said. Metro Denver's share of upper income households increased 1 percentage point to 25%, while lower income households rose 4 percentage points to 22%, according to Pew. Trend toward a smaller middle class is a national one and has been underway for 4 decades, since the beginning of Reaganomics, but sluggish economic growth has exacerbated it. There is a wave of industrial labor unrest hitting France right now. This is what's being disputed in France's labor reform bill. The 35-hour week remains in place, but as an average, firms can negotiate with local trade unions on more or fewer hours from week to week, up to a maximum of 46 hours. Firms are given greater freedom to reduce pay. The law eases conditions for laying off workers, strongly regulated in France. It's hoped the companies will take on more people if they know they can shed jobs in case of a downturn. Employers are given more leeway to negotiate holidays and special leaves, such as maternity or for getting married. These are currently also heavily regulated. Officials say 153,000 people protested across France, but union leaders put the number at nearly twice that. And finally, here are a few economic quickies. In an editorial published Saturday, the FT, the Financial Times, urged the oil industry to face a future of slow and steady decline. The editorial board wrote, quote, Instead of railing against climate policies or paying them lip service while quietly defying them with investment decisions, the oil companies will serve their investors and society better if they accept the limits they face and embrace a future of long-term decline. In a major victory for American workers, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals in Chicago ruled Thursday that healthcare software company Epic Systems in Wisconsin could not require mandatory arbitration agreements where workers are forced to waive their rights to collective and class actions. Verizon workers settled strike with tentative agreement. There were huge gains for nearly 40,000 Verizon workers who've been on strike since April 13th. And that's the way it is for the week of May 31st, 2016. I'm Thom Hartmann on Labor and Economic News.